Hey, what's going on, Clipper people? It is me, William the Opinion Updike.
And I am positive Chuck Mockler.
And today we're going to be talking about the Clippers closing out the Rockets series on the season. They got that win 113-100. Things really came together in the third quarter. So we'll talk about what we liked from that one as well as what we didn't like. And then every single Wednesday, we bring you Whatcha Say Wednesday. We put a poll out on Twitter that's at Locked On Clips. We want to know what you think about a given subject. This one's all about the return of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And then we got some shavings talking about some G League guys as well as the Clippers Threes for Trees campaign. So all that and more coming up right about now.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome to Locked On Clips. I am positive Chuck Mockler. This is William the Opinion Updike. We come at these guys, 5 days a week for the most part, right?
Yeah, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific.
Make us your first listen. Let's get into this Clippers win. They win 113-100 over the Rockets. Started off ugly, but what did we get yet another night of against the Houston Rockets?
Wow, just another incredible dominant Zoo performance. Like we talked about it in the preview, but this front court sort of rotation I thought was one of those things that the Clippers could find really easily exploitable. And we'll talk about it more throughout the segment, but basically Zubats and Morris did just that. Zoo himself finished with 22, 12, and 2 with a steal and a block. He was plus 13 for the team. It was just absolutely incredible stuff. I believe this is his fifth double-double in 7 games, which is pretty impressive for a guy who, offensively, that could hold him back. But we kind of talked about coming into this season, especially with like a bit of an increased role and less guys kind of fighting him on the boards, that we would hope that he could get close to those kind of double-double numbers. So it's good to see him doing that. But even with this 22, 12, and 2 stat line, I'm wondering, Chuck, what do you think Ty Lue said his stat line should have been?
Well, he made a joke in the postgame that he would have had 20 and 15, but he gave Morris and Batum some rebounds. So I like that. I like to think that Zoo chose not to have 20 and 15 in this one. He was 4 of 6 in the third with 7 boards in that frame too, which was just absolutely awesome to see. And that's really when things opened up for the Clippers. Like the Clippers as a team go 7 of 9 from 3. Reggie was 3 of 3 from 3 in the third quarter, 56% from the floor, 40 points to the Rockets 25. Mook had 9 in this one too. Like this game was brutal to watch for the first 2 quarters, and then it opened up. And Morris had a nice bounce back game, and I would like to note, just as we requested, got the first play drawn up for him, and he drained it.
Yeah. You noticed that right away. Morris did have a solid bounce back. He finished with 18, 1, and 3, which he also had 2 steals, but 1 board.
That's what I mean.
How's a guy that big get 1 board? Anyway,
it has to be by design. It has to be the coaches telling him to get back or something like that, because
he's a little slower. Like, maybe you want him a little bit further out from the basket so he can get back into defensive position. Yeah, totally. He was hyper efficient though. It was great to see, like I said, another part of that front court kind of just exploiting this sort of mismatch that we had on the Rockets.
And he guarded Christian Wood too, which was kind of weird. It wasn't effective in the first quarter because Christian Wood just went off, but they kind of I don't know if trusted him is giving too much respect to Christian Wood, but they felt comfortable mobility wise, putting him on a center who's pretty mobile and plays more like a 4.
Yeah, totally. This Marcus Morris performance kind of raises the question for me. Like, let's say this team is going to the playoffs as is.
Right.
What does Morris need to be doing from like a number standpoint or otherwise if this team is going to make it out of the first round?
So we're past the play-in and we're in the first round now against who would it be? The Suns? Or no, it'd be the Warriors.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, but it's be efficient. It's like, we don't care about the boards, obviously, but it's be efficient and it's be able to put in some solid defensive minutes, because we have seen some times this season where he's a little just maybe not as I don't know if engaged is the right word. He just can't get to the right spot in time. And if that's an effort thing or just a health thing, either way. But a lot of it's going to kind of hinge on his defense. We know the offense is going to kind of be there. We hope it has some semblance of consistency because that's real up and down. But I think it's on the defensive side of the ball for the most part. This Clippers offense isn't, depending who comes back.
Good?
Yeah. Depending who comes back, the offense, it's not going to light it up, right? Like this team is going to be an annoying team to play for defensive reasons for the most part. So I think it's that side of the ball.
Definitely. What else do we like from this one?
Reggie Jackson, 17, 5, and 6, only 2 turnovers. Not really efficient except for the third quarter, but he was 50% from 3, 37% from the floor. Like, dude, when we're getting wins at this point with this iteration of the Clippers, I don't care if he's efficient. It's just like we need it either way. And even in losses, it's like if Reggie's going to shoot us out of a game, he's also why we're in a lot of these games sometimes. So I'm just kind of becoming like, do your thing when it comes to Reggie. This version of the Clippers, I should reiterate that point one more time.
Definitely. And I want to give an honorable mention for Brandon Boston Jr., who did have a nice little offensive game in this one. He finished with 11, 4, and 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily contributing to like winning basketball necessarily.
He crossed up Garrison Matthews and hit a 3. That was pretty sick.
Yeah, but it was a nice little offensive performance from him.
I like too that. So Brandon is like always kind of the skinniest guy on the court, right? Like just looks wise, he's the skinniest guy. He gets away with kind of a lot of contact when he drives to the basket. Like he was putting elbows into guys and really taking that contact. And I think he gets away with more physicality because he's so much slimmer than everybody else. So it's nice to see him kind of like taking advantage of it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great call. He has to find ways to sort of get around that. I mean, every rookie does, but it's good to see him even in limited stints sort of, figuring things out. And I think that we've seen an evolution in what he can do offensively, which was already a pretty polished skill set for him.
Yeah, and
so that's great to see.
We also got to give a shout out to Covington, who had 4 blocks in 19 minutes as a sub.
Unbelievable.
Which is insane. Finished with 7 and 8. That's good to see. What did we not like in this game, Will?
Well, I mean, you alluded to sort of that first half. Ooh. And like this game was not a pretty game to start. Clippers went into the half down 50-49. I mean, the Rockets shot 37% from 3. We only shot 35% from the floor. Yeah. And then, Christian Wood.
No, the Rockets were 37% from the field too. It was just ugly basketball for both
sides. That's right. Yeah. From the field. So, it was not a great watch. Christian Wood also was giving us a lot of trouble early. But we came in and made some adjustments and we were able to sort of mitigate that. But yeah, I was worried that we weren't going to be able to seal this one after that first half.
We started hot too, which is funny. Like we made like our first 4 shots or something like that, maybe even 5. But hey, we didn't really make any adjustments at half, as Ty Lue said. But it worked out. I also Hartenstein was bad tonight, and he had 5 of the 15 turnovers. And every one of them was just stupid. Like they were just bad turnovers. He finished -2 in a 13-point win. He took a 3, which is so stupid at this point. It's just frustrating, man. Like we know he's so good offensively at some things, but he's so raw still, it feels like.
Yeah. So do you think this is a situation of, a quarter of the season left? A little bit less at this point. Do you think he's trying to do too much to maybe thinking ahead to that next contract? Because I feel like that's a little bit of what this is I feel like maybe he's coming on a little strong, maybe trying to do a little bit too much. The vibes are a little
too much. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not really it's just not really working out.
Yeah, he's scaring the party guests. I don't know about that. I think we were up, I guess, so that's good. But it's just been like we talked about on the last episode, right? Like when he's the guy who's competing for a spot, it looks like he's a little more locked in or just playing better. And then when it's hey, this is your spot now, it's a little different in terms of what we're doing.
And we have kind of seen falling to earth of some of the things that Hart, was bringing to this team. And, we talk about the passing and praise him for that. But like, if it's coming with 5 turnovers, I mean, it's
useless from a center. Like, unless you're Jokic,
it's
can't
like
have
more
5
than
turnovers.
It's more than completely negated. So
yeah,
that's going to be something to monitor moving forward, because we've already started to kind of have our own hesitations about sort of his utility in a play-in or playoff, wherever, as far as we get. But yeah, that's definitely one of those things to keep an eye on, sort of him kind of just getting back to doing the things that make him effective. So
yeah. And then Kennard only got 4 shots, which was weird. He looked a little gun shy for part of it, which is why I think I put this in the what we didn't like, which was kind of confusing. He only ended with 4 points. Just an odd dud. Like, it was really just
3-point competition, man. He's in his head now.
It was just kind of the gun shyness that I was like, there were a couple shots that he passed up. But yeah, I don't know.
Now every time he has the ball, he's like, "Is this a do ball? Is this a money rack?
Do zone. Either way, the Clips got the win. We're on a little streak right now, which is nice. Coming up, we are going to be talking the Whatcha Say Wednesday poll, which is all about Kawhi and PG returning. But first, Will, if I wanted to wager some money on the internet, where could I do that?
You got to check out Prize Picks. Look,
What?
Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players, as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game.
Rodney Hoods.
Prize Picks, it's great. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. All of the users out there that deposit and use the promo code NBA will get 100% instant deposit match. That's up to $100. Here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. No funny business. So Prize Picks, they allow mixed sport entries. You can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the very same entry. You can also use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your App Store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
All right, welcome to Whatcha Say Wednesday, Kawhi and PG Return Edition. We asked a pretty simple question. We said, with 19 games left in the Clippers' regular season, now 18, do you want Paul George and or Kawhi Leonard to try and return? The options were yes. The second option, no. 74% of people, of the 780 votes we got, voted for yes. 26% no. Before we get into this discussion, Will, where do you sit on this?
It's a simple question, Doctor. I think it's there, for me. I just feel like there's like a lot of qualifiers in this
Sure.
regarding. I mean, honestly, just regarding like their health and timelines. But I mean, I guess the operative word here in this poll for me, I'm going to say, is try and return.
Yeah.
And with that as the main qualifier, I would have to go ahead and vote with the majority in yes. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but I just think that there's value to playoff reps. Even if you're fighting an uphill battle, even if you got to come in on a plan, even if for whatever reason, they just want to ramp up through the regular season. Like, look, championship windows are not long. And I'm not saying that even if they were to come back, that necessarily could still make this our year. I mean, there's just too much to be seen.
It's really wide open, though. The West is crazy wide open. So, like, if it were to be a year.
No, that is a great point. Like, it is wide open right now, especially with, injuries to some of the top teams. But it wouldn't be a guarantee,
Sure,
it
absolutely
wouldn't be a guarantee. And, obviously health, not guaranteed next season either.
Yeah.
So I think that is another one of those things that has me leaning, like, if they're ready to come back or feel that they're ready to come back, yes, any time that this team can get together in a competitive environment at as close to full strength as they can possibly get is good for development. Like, just period for me. Like, that's that's what it is for me.
And it goes a long way too for next year for just getting chemistry, so there's less of a ramp up period, kind of for all that stuff too. I'm in the like, if they're healthy, yes, they should absolutely come back, because it's like, I mean, you just look at what the playoff picture is, and I will say I don't want them to come back unless they can get like at least 5 games in or whatever, because I think if you come back too quick and then it's just postseason basketball, that feels a little dicey to me.
What about this? They only play 15 minutes.
In those 5 games for the regular season before the playoffs?
No, in the playoffs. There's no ramp up in the regular season. They play 15 minutes.
Sure. I think the Clippers could get through a play-in game with Kawhi and PG only playing 15 minutes. No problem. For the play-in game. LA Clips Forum voted yes. Again, people, if they're healthy, really wanted them back. They said, I'll take the chance of these two staying healthy in a handful of regular season games in the playoffs this year, then an entire 82-game season in the playoffs next year. Next season doesn't necessarily guarantee health. So, like, it's kind of with your point of, like, if they're healthy, like, it feels like a year where it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, that in their opinion, like, you know, this is definitely like a year, like, or possibly even the year in that opinion, if health isn't guaranteed next year, that, like, you got to go all in, which I guess I don't know that I fully agree with, but I definitely can see the point.
Yeah. Draxtem Skloons, don't know if I pronounced that right, said Kawhi, yes, at 9 months after ACL surgery, athletes are at the same risk of re-injury as they were pre-ACL tear. 9 months is April 15th. PG, yes, 12 weeks is more than enough time to fully heal his elbow ligament. I don't know if this person's a doctor. I'm not going to gauge on any of these timelines being right or not, but
I trust medical advice from anyone on Twitter.
Yes. But it has been a minute. We don't really know what the situation is with PG's elbow, which is what makes all of this really frustrating. Just because it's like, we have no idea if he's close. We don't know what the rehab situation is, or like if it's just still rest and stuff like that. We've got no promo shots of him working out, which is usually a good indicator. But that's what makes me a little cautious, and like, maybe not cautious about the decision, but cautious about my belief now that these guys will come back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked about this all the time last season, but it's like, you know, the runway keeps getting shorter and shorter. So I think there's some validity, especially to what you said of like, if there's no regular season ramp up, like,
I'm out on that.
Is that
like,
is that the time to really like thrust two people who, like, the entire future of this franchise is so dependent on, like, is that the time? And I guess, yeah, like, once again, for me, it goes back to those qualifiers. I would have to say it depends, but like with no ramp up, I'm probably leaning a lot closer to the no.
Yeah. Clipper Spencer had, there were a couple dissenting opinions here. He said, leaning towards no. Kawhi, no way. Assuming he hasn't started one-on-one drills in secret, there isn't enough time. Paul George, I'm less worried about, since it's an upper body injury that's pretty uncommon in basketball. But if it's not for sure 100% healed, don't risk it. Makes sense. C City 92 said, I say no because rushing players back isn't a good idea. He referenced KD in 2019. Said the guys we have this year have done an unbelievable job. And have gotten a season's worth of invaluable reps, which only helps going into next season. I think Ty needs some time to figure out lineups as well. So the last point with the lineups, I actually would kind of be hyped to see what Ty could put together. Because I think we didn't add Norm to this. We don't know if Norm's coming back. Which I think adding Norm makes the lineups a little harder to figure out. Because, like, you know what Covington does. You know what I mean? Like, you know how he works. And Norm needs the ball in his hands a little bit more. Not that it's a bad thing, of course, but harder to kind of last second game plan that. So I kind of agree with both sides in this. like Clipper Spencer makes a great point too of like, is KD just playing one-on-one in the secret, or is Kawhi playing one-on-one in the secret? Like, we don't know. Like, we've heard is explosive box jumps, basically.
Yeah, and those explosions were kind of a while ago at this point. So
yes.
Yeah, who knows? And I think is it weird? I just want to bring up this as a quick thing. Is it weird that it now feels like Norm is maybe the furthest away of any of these guys?
That's a good point. Like, we have no real indication at all of what his timeline is. It's weird and uncomfortable, and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Like most injury things for the Clippers.
Yes, as per usual. Coming up, thank you for everyone who voted, by the way. You can vote on that on Twitter when we put those out. Coming up in Shavings, we're going to be talking Chris Dunn, as well as threes for trees. But first, we got to give a shout out to Built Bar. They have so many fantastic flavors. Built Bar fans are always rambling on and passionate about their favorite flavs. They got coconut, cherry, barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. I've really been enjoying orange lately. Just throwing my system a curveball. You know?
Is that your favorite?
Oh, man. Yes, it was. I don't know if that's worse than raspberry or not. Not only are Built Bar flavors the best, tasting they're healthy too. 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, 4 to 5 grams sugar, 4 to 5 grams net carbs. Built Bar is the official protein of the U.S. track and field team. Pretty neat. Pretty cool stuff. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKEDON for 15% off at Built.com.
All right, so we're back with Shavings, which, if you're new to the show, basically last segment of every day, we just kind of wrap up everything sort of around the Clipper sphere, around the NBA. Chuck, what's going on out there?
So, is it time to call Chris Dunn up? Is it time to figure some contracts?
Do we have his number?
So, he's playing as we're recording this, but the game before March, what is it, 2nd? The game before March 1st, he put up 21-3-3 versus Birmingham. Game before that, he had 21-9-4. He's had some nice highlights, like the juice is there a little bit, but like, what is the harm in cutting one of Samir Rodney and just bringing him up as like the third point guard?
I mean, I think compared to like two guys who are DNPs, and I feel like I have my questions about where Chris Dunn could in actuality fit into this lineup.
Oh yeah, this is purely just for regular season stuff.
And if that would be a fit, but I would say, given sort of some of the offensive inconsistencies and struggles of that second unit, and a lot being put on Terrence, who is still very young and relatively new to the role and
playing
position.
Well for sure, but it's up and down.
Exceeding expectations to be sure. But I guess I just see a little bit more room for playing time in that situation than like a Semi Ojeleye, who's like a wing project who has not panned out on this will be the third team or so.
Yeah.
That's been trying to make that work. And then, Rodney Hood is one of those guys who I think if we had less projects and, like less wings, maybe it would make a little bit more sense. I just don't know if that's where we're at. So I think that I'm with you in, if we were to make a roster spot, I think that it makes a little bit of sense.
And it's
Give
like,
it a try.
And like with a full bench lineup, dude, if the full bench lineup isn't working offensively, you can really tell that there's not a quote unquote like actual point guard on the floor. So I think that, and like that's where he slots in, right? Like we're not talking like substantial minutes for Chris Dunn. We're just saying some spot minutes when things aren't going well. He can come into his thing. I think the dream scenario is you cut Semi or Rodney, you sign Amir to an actual contract, and then you move Dunn to a two-way. Fun time. Fun way to end the season. Like, why not? Are you getting more and more stressed out as the Clippers go a day without signing Amir to a contract?
Yes. Every single day I'm getting more and more worried. And it's not that it's like becoming less of a possibility. It's just this thing. And I talked about this a little bit before, but I mean, like, why not just give someone the peace of mind, right? Like, we know what Coffee brings to this team. We know what he brings on both ends of the floor. He's a known quantity in the locker room, on the bench, like just everything.
Yes.
It just makes sense to me that you would not make him wait. And sure, you have his bird rights. You obviously can make him wait. And even to have him playoff eligible, you have until after the end of the regular season, barely.
One day.
Barely to make something happen there. But I just think that I just do think that there's something to like giving somebody the peace of mind But maybe there is the flip side of that too, and like you want a player to stay hungry. I don't really know. I think that Coffee is just, to me, been here long enough, and like in this like Clippers tool bag of like very kind of specific sort of utensils.
Yeah.
I feel like Coffee has a very clearly defined role in that. And so for me, it's just kind of like, what are we doing?
And the contract's not even going to be crazy, right? Like he could average 20 for the rest of the season, and I think it would not change what his contract would be.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
It's just one of those things. So things we forgot about. Speaking of which, the Clippers' Threes for Trees campaign is doing some good. For every 3 the Clippers make, Aspiration will plant 3 trees. They're up to around 3,000 trees planted now. Where are they planting these trees?
Wow.
Couldn't tell you.
Is this carbon offsets?
I mean, this sounds exactly like carbon offsets, which, if you're not familiar with, please watch the King of the Hill episode on carbon offsets. It is fantastic, just like every other King of the Hill episode. I don't know. We got to maybe do a Love Mary Quarantine for some other blank for blank things that the Clippers could do.
Oh, I'm down with it.
I do also want to know where they're planting these trees. Is it at the new stadium? What if the new stadium's just surrounded by 3,000 trees?
That'd be awesome.
That would be pretty tight. All right. Anything else in shavings?
Nah, let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Thursday's episode, we're doing preview Clippers versus the team across the hall. A Thirsty Thursday, of course. And whatever else happens between now and then in Clipperland, if someone wanted to tell, their mail person, shout out to the U.S. Postal Workers out there, where they could listen to us while they're walking around and delivering us our mail, where could they do that?
So you can check us out on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app on your mobile device. We're also on Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Stitcher. We're on Deezer. We're on Amazon Music. If you haven't already, please leave a rating or review over on the podcast app or Spotify now. We mentioned it up top. We do mention Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific. Hey, make us your first listen.
Why not? Great way to start your day, especially when the Clips are on a win streak. I have been Positive Chuck Mockler.
And I am William the Opinion Updike. And as always, we appreciate you.